Hey, if you kayak fish in New England, you've got 4 months of downtime during the winter. And what I did was a ton of home renovations and upgrading the handle and reel seat and balance on a freshwater rod. So for me, the first step was to cut off this heat shrink handle tubing that I put on. I originally put it on there thinking that it would make the stock handles better, and it did, but it didn't fix the balance, and it wasn't enough to make me happy. So just slice it, cut it off, throw it off. Then I thought about let's heat it off and see if I can just slide the handle off. You can see that quite didn't work. Part of the handle came off, but it didn't work for the remainder. So what you can do is carefully slice off the existing handle. Make sure that you don't cut yourself and you don't scratch up the blank. You'll eventually get to a point where there's just a little bit remaining, and you may need to take like an X-Acto knife or a carpet knife, etc., stuff like that, and just carefully trim away the last pieces. It doesn't have to be exact, not for what I was doing, simply because you'll see in a little bit. Anyways, then you got to cut off the reel seat. Same deal. Take some time, slice it off, peel off portions of it. It's just basically epoxy to the blanks. There's nothing structural that you could do wrong as long as you're careful. You will get to a point where you could just slide off the remaining bit, and you're left with mostly clean blank. So my next step was to dry fit the new handle and reel, because one of the things that bugged me about this rod was it was unbalanced. It was really tip heavy. So with the opportunity to put on a new handle and reel seat, I slid it up further on the blank to get better balance. Obviously, before you do any epoxy and gluing in place, you just want to double check, make sure that it's at the balance point that you want. So then simply mark on the blank for a reference point where you want this to be, and you'll then move to the next parts, which are basically prepping it for epoxying into place. Mixed up what I had to do with this particular kit. It was like a $5 kit from AliExpress. Looks cool, but it's not the highest quality. I had to actually glue on one part of the reel seat itself had a foam piece at the end. So I just glued that in place with some epoxy. You see, I've got my iPhone with a countdown timer because it's a 5-minute epoxy, and basically you want to have it in place right around or before that 5-minute mark hits. Rubber bands keep it in place, clean off any epoxy that squeezes out before it dries. Now you saw there, I had a bit of a problem where the inner diameter of the reel seat was way bigger than the blank. So I'm going to kind of do a hack, and I'm going to build up the blank using strips of duct tape. I really don't recommend this with anything that is like a high quality rod, but hey, the Shakespeare Micro is $20, and it's going to wind up way better than it was like stock right out of the box. So just take your time, just keep building strips upon strips, and you'll see how that makes sense in a second. This is just checking the fit periodically as it go. You don't want it too tight. You want some space for the epoxy to sit in between the duct tape and the grooves in between the duct tape. Again, you're going to mix up some epoxy, and you'll see me just slather it on for this particular section that I'm working on. I got a bunch of built up duct tape sections, so I want it on the duct tape and I want it in between the duct tape. And I'm going to slide the reel seat onto the shaft now, and you just don't want to like shove it right on. You want to carefully go back and forth so that the epoxy is getting in all the grooves and making firm contact with the reel seat itself. Um, you know, it just takes a little practice. Just go slow. You're going to make a mess. It's inevitable. But eventually you get to the point where it feels pretty good even when it's dry, when it's wet. So with this particular handle in place replacement, what I did is bought another super cheap, like $3 cork, fake cork uh, length of handle, because what I want to do is in between the split grip PVC, not PVC, the foam handles pieces, I want to put a bit of cork in between. So I measured the diameter to match the diameter of the foam grips so it'll look nice and smooth, and then simply cut with an X-Acto knife. And I'm doing the same thing. Build up the blank with some
Oh,
duct
shit,
tape,
that's fucking
slide it
nice.
on, put the epoxy in there. With epoxy, you want it to rotate the shaft so the epoxy, before it firmly sets up, has ability to flow into all the crevices and be uniformly distributed. Yeah, and then if
Awesome.
you have like OCD, you can do what I do here, which is basically taking some epoxy with a really fine tip brush, and if there are any gaps that are going to just fill in the gaps. And then because this is not even a cork handle, it's a cheap fake cork handle. What I did is I taped off the EVA foam and sprayed a few coats of polyurethane because I don't want this thing to chip and break. And end result is this. Super happy with it. It looks cool. It's got the right balance for the float rod, application that I use, and $20 rod. Now it's a $27 rod. It took me about 8 hours of my time. Super happy.